bem? Eu sei que eu prometi há alguns dias já vir aqui fazer esse vídeo pra vocês. Eu acabei adiando, mas hoje finalmente vamos começar a nossa saga de sprints de leitura. Eu tava esperando um livro que eu tô super animada pra ler, que é um esquema de pirâmide literária, porque eu tava esperando chegar e aí finalmente chegou. E é um livro em inglês. E muita gente foi lá no Instagram me falar que gostaria de me ouvir um pouquinho lendo em inglês. Então, hoje eu vou trazer esse vídeo pra vocês. Eu vou passar um gloss antes, porque tô com a boca bem seca. E, bom, vocês já sabem pelo título. Mas o livro que nós vamos ler hoje é Zodiac Academy. A gente vai começar o livro 1. Eu não sei quantos capítulos eu vou conseguir ler. Eu acho que 2 capítulos por hoje vai ser bem ok, dependendo do tamanho. Eu não olhei o tamanho dos capítulos ainda. Qualquer coisa a gente lê 3 capítulos. O objetivo aqui desse quadro novo aqui do canal é realmente incentivar a leitura. Então eu quero que vocês peguem gosto pra ler, assim como eu sou apaixonada por ler. Então quero que seja um espaço pra gente recomendar livros umas pras outras. Eu quero trazer cada semana um livro diferente e ler 3, 4 capítulos no máximo, pra vocês decidirem se vocês gostam ou não do livro, pra vocês comprarem. Então hoje vai ser Zodiac Academy, vai ser em inglês, porque esse livro infelizmente ainda não tem em português. Mas eu pensei que seria legal a gente trazer ele aqui pro primeiro vídeo dessa série de leitura. Então, vamos lá. Eu gosto, antes de começar a ler, eu gosto de usar um creminho de mão. Eu tô com meu dedo machucado aqui, então eu vou tentar evitar que o creme pegue nele, essa parte. Eu gosto de passar um creme nas mãos porque as folhas deixam a mão meio ressecada, sabe? E aí eu prefiro usar um creminho pra evitar o ressecamento e pra ser mais fácil virar as folhas. Então vamos lá. Esse aqui é o primeiro livro, Zodiac Academy, The Awakening, e tem muitos outros pela frente. Temos um mapinha. Então aqui a gente tem um mapa que eu não sei nada sobre esse universo, mas parece ser uma ilha ou é somente a academia mesmo. Vamos lá. Welcome to Zodiac Academy. Note to all students: vampire bites, loss of limbs or getting lost in the waiting room would not count as a valid excuse for being late to class. Chapter 1. Achei muito bonitas as divisórias de capítulos. Elas são pretinhas. Bem legal. Chapter 1. Darcy. I was halfway through the window when the police sirens sounded. Pause, breath, wriggle hips. The window was a tiny thing with a metal latch heart digging into my belly, but I was underfed and had the determination of a pit bull. You've met your match, Mr. Window. Sirens again. My heart thumped a warning tune in my ears. I lifted my head. The bathroom below me, familiar and haunting. I didn't have to do this, breaking and entering. Although technically I wasn't breaking anything. My sister was way better at this kind of thing, but maybe that was why I was here instead of her. I wanted to prove I could do it, so I was damn well going to. Sirens, closer this time, and whoosh, I was mentally carried away to a jail cell. Then, wiping dramatically on a stand in court. Guilty, the jury chimed them bam, a metal door slamming in my face while I turned to cellmate, Patrice, who had a gut the size of a beach ball and a menacing gleam in her eye. Maybe prison was the answer to my prayers. Tori would kill me though. Although, to be fair, she was one mistake away from ending up behind bars herself. Would be a force to be reckoned with in jail. Queens of the condemned, like Thelma and Louise, if they hadn't driven themselves off a cliff. Mental note: ask Tor if jail is a decent plan B. For now, prison wasn't on my to-do list. My senses were alive with adrenaline and okay, just a little bit of fear. Can I do this? Yes, I can, damn it. I took a bracing breath. The chances were this cop. The chances were those cops weren't coming for me. I just had to be fast as a precaution. I braced my hands against the ice cold tiles and pushed, my hips getting jammed and my butt waving like a flag as I hung out the back of the house. The midnight blue tips of my ebony hair were waving around like a shit in this storm. Push, wriggle, yes. I clambered onto the toilet without grace and jumping down. My beat-up Converses as quiet as air as they hit the tiles. I took a moment to internally celebrate what I've just achieved, rocking my ass to a silent tune. I did it. I yanked the door open, darting further into the house, which I knew was empty, and yet a knot frayed and tugged apart in my chest. A floorboard cracked beneath my feet as I moved, and the sound was a thunder crack in my ears. Bates at work. No one's here. His name in my head sent a violent chill through me. Up until 3 months ago, this house had been mine and Tori's home, if you could call it that. Pete had never thought of us as his kind, as his kin. Kin? What does this word mean? Would be stuck here for our final year in foster care. And the day before we turned 18, he'd shove us out on our asses, since he was no longer entitled to the state fund for looking after us. But the only thing he ever looked after was a bottle of Jack in his precious 58-inch TV. I slipped into the room which has been mine and Doris. He stripped bare already. He wouldn't be getting any more foster kids now that Darla had left him. Nearly 2 months before our birthday, she'd walk out, and I couldn't blame her. Nearly 2 months before he'd conveniently forgotten to mention that to our social worker, and with being too close to freedom to kick up a fuss. There hadn't been much to remove from the room except the bunk bed that had been too damn small and too damn degrading for a couple of grown escorts. Oh no, did I forget to thank you for that setup, Pete? I'll be sure to do it on my own way. On my own. I guess it is. Do it on my way out. I threw caution to the wind and jogged loudly across the room. I pressed my palms flushy to the wall, moving, searching. I grinned as I found the right spot and my heart pulsing with hope. I gripped the edge of the brick and pulled, the misery coming loose until I revealed the little cubhole Tori and I had used to stash stuff. Reaching inside, I bit down on my lip in concentration as I tried to feel out what I was looking for. Cash. A whole wad. We'd been thrown out of Pete's house so hard and fast, we hadn't had time to grab it. Tá procurando por dinheiro. And it wasn't the type of thing we could have asked Pete to hand back to us. He'd have spent it on one night at the local casino, but we'd been saving for years. While I'd been hustling for money from students at school, buying and selling their unwanted crap from them and taking a profit, Tori has been doing something much more legal. She never really went into it because she didn't want to implicate me, but I could harvest, I guess, at what it was. She always came home at ungodly hours of the night smelling of gasoline and adrenaline. I couldn't find in me to care about the sources of our funds. This money was our future. In this precious brick hole was nearly $2,000, enough for 6 months rent on our apartment. In a shit heap it might have been, but it was certainly better than a cold sidewalk. Knuckles rapped against the front door hard. My gut plummeted. Pete didn't have friends. He was a loner, a loser. Cops imminent. My fingers brushed the pile of cash and I snatched in my fist, bundling what I hope was the whole contents between my fingers. A crash sounded as the cops battered the front door down. No, 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 no. Heart in throat, I ran like there was a fire up my ass. A door burst open down the hall. Freeze! A male voice shouted. I threw a glance over my shoulder and all I saw was the barrel of a gun. Holy shit, don't shoot! I crashed into a wall in panic, my shoulder bruising on impact. I said freeze. The cop yelled. Desperate, I lurched toward the bathroom, slamming the door shut and shoving the bolt into place. No shots fired yet. That's gotta be a good thing. Cops don't shoot unarmed teenage girls, do they? I shoved the cash into the back pocket of my pants, scooted up Pete's loose breath and tucked into the toilet bowl. A thumb on the other side of the door, but I was already halfway through the window, and Pete's toothbrush was back in its holder. Totally worth the 5 seconds it had cost me. Ela pegou a escova de dente do Pete e passou na privada, antes de fugir pela janela. Perfeita, uma diva. I squeezed out and hit the ground running, fleeing toward the back fence where I knew for a fact the neighbor's hot boiler had dug a sized hole. More shouts followed me, but the wind was tugging at my hair and my lungs were expanding with freedom. I was pure ecstasy, tumbling through me like a drug. I pictured Tori's face when I told her what I've done to Pete's toothbrush, and couldn't wait to hear her laugh over it. I doubt whether I could pull this off. I was usually the one who tripped over her own feet on a regular basis, but not today, damn it. Hey, stop! A female cop this time. My dream died and my heart turned to ice. I dropped into a flare bed and hauled myself through the hole under the fence. My jeans snagged on the underside of the sharp wood. It scratched my skin and I yelped as the sound of the footstep closed in. I need this money. It's not even his. I shouted, my heart wailing just as loudly in my chest. Hands caught my ankles and my heart nearly combusted. I unhooked my belt and in that minute, I felt it, all of it. The cash cascaded down the mud, brushing across my torn skin and falling to the ground. I hadn't tucked in my pocket. I'd stuck in my damn belt. No, I kicked out at the cop, but she didn't let go, her nails digging in. Sarge, she yelled for backup, and I could see my life fading before my eyes. Screw jail. It was a terrible plan B. A forbidding male voice filled the air, which cut into me like a knife. Let go of her. The cop released me, and I thanked my lucky stars as I scrambled onto my knees. I turned back, but a pair of large male hands were already wrapping all of her lovely green cash up in a ball. That's our life you're taking. I butted the fence hard, yelling my rage before turning and running as fast and as hard as I could in the opposite direction. Whoever that guy was, he'd both saved my ass and ruined my life. Thanks, asshole. Okay. I trudged up the 4 floors to our apartment, caked and mug and furious as hell with myself. My hands were jammed in my pockets, and I was soaked through from the downpour I just experienced for 10 blocks. Chicago was having mood swings. If it wasn't the wind, it was the rain. It was September, damn it. They were still sunbath in Springfield. I shivered as the cold trickled in my bones and made every single part of me numb, apart from the pain of losing that cash and the shame that I'd failed so deeply. I twisted my key in the lock, marching into the tiny studio with the flaky green paint on the walls and exposed brickwork which didn't look hipster. It looked like a half-finished job. Tori was scratched out on the couch, thumbing her cell phone, which had a jack cracked up in the center of the screen. At least she'd secured herself a smartphone. I was stuck with a Nokia from the 90s, which did nothing but make calls, as if that was what a phone was for. I shed my leather jacket with a dramatic huff, and she glanced up, arching a brow. Her face transformed as she pulled herself out of the technology brain and sprang to her feet. "Where have you been?" she asked, confused and gleaming from her olive green eyes, which were the exact same shade as mine. Like everything about us, bronzed skin, our lips full and white. We were a mirror version of each other, except for my hair's dark blue tips. Maybe that was why we drove each other crazy sometimes. Elas são gêmeas. Agora entendi. Elas são gêmeas. I threw my jacket on the floor without answering, tempted to stamp on it, but Tori sucked in a breath, pointing at me. I looked down, finding my hem stained red with blood from the fence catastrophe. "It's fine." I tore the shirt off, dumping it in the garbage bag, which strung up in the 2-foot kitchenette, which didn't even include a toaster. I swallowed my pride and prepared to tell Tori just how much I'd fail us. I decided to get our money back from Pete's, but the cops showed up. I ran, then I dropped the cash. I was so angry with myself that I bashed my fist down on the counter. Clumsy idiot. "That was $2,000, Tori gasped. I know. I shut my eyes, my embarrassment devouring me from the inside out. I had to keep my head. I had to figure this out, because we were so effing screwed if we didn't. We'd only manage a few months rent here because we'd sold a single item of value we'd had when we left Pete's. A Gucci handbag I'd spotted in a thrift store labeled as a knockoff. Pete hadn't known that it was the real deal, or he wouldn't have gotten his crazy palms all over in the second he could. "Did they see you?" Tori demanded. "Yes," I sighed. Pete must have gotten cameras installed or made the neighbor. Who knows? It all amounts to the same thing. I messed up and we were screwed. "They don't know we live here," Tori said thoughtfully. "It's the money though, Tori." I flung myself on the threadbare couch with found down an alley. Elas são muito pobres, pelo que eu tô percebendo. E elas estavam num lar adotivo. A pessoa responsável por elas era esse Pete, que ele era um babaca. E elas guardaram $2.000 escondido na casa. E ela tentou buscar esses dólares, mas quase foi pega pelos policiais. Ela escapou, mas perdeu o dinheiro. Até agora foi isso, tudo isso que eu entendi. Posso estar perdendo alguma coisa, posso, porque em inglês eu não sou 100% fluente. Eu tento juntar as coisas e formar a frase na minha cabeça. Ok, vamos lá. How are we going to pay the rent? Tori perched on the edge of the couch, punching my shoulders in the way she always did to say she loved me. Tori wasn't much for the feelings type, but that didn't mean they weren't there. And though I sometimes wish for a few more warm hugs, she always showed me she cared in her own way. "It's cool, Darcy. I'm doing a job tonight. We'll figure it out after that." "You are?" I glanced up at her with a hopeful look. My eyes and I'm white. Anyway, white. "Yep," she grinned, but I could tell her. "Yep," she grinned, but I could tell she was still disappointed about the cash. Damn it. If only I'd pocketed it. Why do I always mess everything up? The rain was slowing to a drizzle as the evening rolled in, and my stomach growled for a meal I wasn't going to get. "Sorry," I sighed as Tori stared out of the window to the street. But one good thing came out of it. She glanced over her shoulder at me, giving me a curious look. What? I wiped Pete's toothbrush around the toilet bowl, the rim and all. Her mouth opened, then she burst out laughing. My anger finally fleeced away as my own laughter joined hers, and our hollow little apartment was filled with something good for once. Oh, ok. Temos uma opinião. Geralmente, os primeiros capítulos de um livro são um pouco mais difíceis de entender, um pouquinho mais difíceis de você se conectar com o personagem, com a personagem. Mas esse aqui, já achei super legal. As duas são gêmeas, Tori e Darcy, o nome da outra. Elas estão bem pobres e estão tentando conseguir dinheiro pra pagar aluguel, pra comer, porque pelo que eu entendi, elas não possuem nem refeição pra se alimentar direito. Vamos lá, eu vou ler o segundo capítulo. Não sei se eu vou terminar ele, porque ele parece ser grande. Mas vamos começar a ler o segundo capítulo. Tori. Esse capítulo vai falar sobre a Tori. O outro capítulo falava sobre a Darcy. Tori, Chapter 2. Spark. I cursed, glancing over my shoulders to make sure I was still alone out here. The night was dark, shadows thick, and silence deep in my particular spot of the multi-story car park, but I could never be too careful. The beautiful silver bike beside me was holding me for the most part, but if anyone spotted me, the game would be up. Spark, come on. I brushed the wires together again, and still nothing happened. Was there an extra security feature on this model that I didn't know about? Eu acho que ela tá roubando um carro, gente. I'd done my research, but limited editions were prone to random upgrades. I have considered cutting my losses and getting the hell out of there. A high-pitched laugh sounded somewhere between the cars. My heart rate spiking in response. Can it see me back here? Not yet. They are nowhere near close enough yet. I wrangled my fears, knives, into line, releasing a slow breath through my nose as I forced my heartbeat to slow down. One last shot before I gave up. I grounded my teeth together, picturing the little spark of energy that I needed so desperately. If I wanted it enough, it would happen. One final try. I brushed the wires together, and the stunning creature beside me poured as life was breathed into its engine. Oh yes. I stood quickly, pulling the black helmet down onto my head and sliding the visor into place so that my face was completely hiding. Tá, ela tá tentando roubar um carro e ela tá usando um capuz, né? Preto no rosto pra esconder o rosto dela. I made sure any final strands of my long black hair were tucked up out of sight and kicked my leg over the bike. Let's go for a ride. I breathed, anticipation stroking my spine like a feather-like caress. My fingers tightened around the throat, não sei falar essa palavra. Eu acho que é tipo o guidão da bicicleta. And I gave it a little tug, letting the engine grow beneath me. I bit my lip. A smile splitting my face. I wasn't clear yet. I had to get this beauty across town of joyous if I wanted this to pay off. But I couldn't help but spend a moment bathing in my victory as I admired the sleek silver beast I was about to ride off on. Hey! My head snapped up as a security guard stepped out of the stairwell to my left. He obviously knew the owner of this beauty and the fact that that wasn't me. "You there? What do you think you were?" I kicked the bike into gear and released the throttle before he could finish that thought. I shot forward, leaning low as I guided the superbike down the step. Ela não tá roubando um carro, tá, gente? Ela tá roubando uma bicicleta elétrica, pelo jeito. Spiraling ramp as quickly as humanly possible. If anyone was coming the other way, then I was dead. Splat, gone. Bye-bye, Tori, but not today. The ground leveled out and I shot towards the exit. The barriers were down, but it didn't matter. The pedestrian access was wide open and I had a huge 6-inch leeway to guide the bike through. With no time to slow it down, I felt a little heavier than it should have, and I hailed sharply as I shot through the narrow opening, my left knee brushing the wall. My heart was pounding, adrenaline shivering along my limbs, but I was out. Now I just had to keep going until I made it to Joyous, and hope the cops didn't catch me first. Not that they stood much chance while I was on this bad boy. With a top speed of 186 miles per hour and the freedom to take back alleys and sidewalks, I was pretty much home dry already. I zigzagged between the traffic, sliding through a set of lights as they switched from amber to red and swung a left. The flash of red and blue lights came from the right a moment before I heard the sirens, and I threw another left-hand turn into the mix before shooting down an alley between two apartment blocks and skidding out onto the street on the far side. With the cops officially lost, I let the throttle loose. Gente, eu não sei falar essa palavra. I let the throttle loose on the long strand of road before me, waving other vehicles and narrowly avoiding a collision as I ran a red light. My heart was pounding even harder now, but not with fear. This was it. Half the reason I took these risks. Riding these machines made me feel alive, unlike anything else. I wish I could take my helmet off and let the wind race through my hair at top speed with nothing but an open road ahead of me. Unfortunately, my disguise would be ruined if I attempted such a thing. The baggy jeans were oversized brown leather jacket were not. In fact, an addiction of my terrible taste in fashion, but were actually cleverly selected to make anyone who saw me believe I was a man. With my long hair and feminine curves hidden, plus the fact that people just prefer to think of men as criminals, my cover was pretty airtight, so long as I did get caught. The city lights sped by, and I added an extra circle to my route just to make absolutely sure that no one had followed me. And if I was being totally honest, I wasn't going to complain about giving this beauty another 5 minutes of time either. My bones threw me, trumped with the power of the engine beneath me, and for a moment I let myself feel the ache to just keep the bike for myself. Of course, the idea was absurd. Where would a girl who could scarcely afford a cell phone have gotten a limited edition superbike from? No, I was destined to ride the bus as usual, and my nighttime exploits would have to remain hidden. Once I was doubly confident that no one was tailing me, I turned the bike down a sloping alleyway and all-rode it to a halt beside the black shutters which marked the service entrance to Joyous. I revved the engine once before cutting it and stepping off the machine I so wished to keep. The seconds dragged as I waited for Joy to let me in, and the tension in my gut coiled tighter as I glanced over my shoulders toward the road at the far end of the alley. Alley. Eu acho que fala alley, né? Quando é tipo beco, sabe? Vai entrar em beco, acho que é alley. If he didn't hurry up, I was going to requent him with my left hook. With a deep rattle which made me jump out of my skin, the shutter was lifted. I didn't wait for it to open all the way, pushing the bike inside and ducking beneath it quickly. The shutter fell to the ground and I kicked the stand down before pulling my helmet off and turning my gaze to Joy. He was a tall man, his dark hair slicked back with gel and his leather jacket stamped with no insignia of his bike gang. Not that I had any interest in that. He was in his late 30s, not old enough to have stopped him from trying his luck with me in the past, but too old for me to be interested. I was 18. He'd been my age when I was born. Rose. Joey let out a long whistle as his gaze traveled over the bike. I didn't waste my breath pointing out all of its features. He was one of the few people I knew whose knowledge on those machines rivaled my own. Pretty good, huh? I asked with a smirk. This was by far the most expensive bike I'd ever stolen for him. Depends on your definition, he replied, his gaze raking over the machine hungrily. Come on, I know what's worth. Don't try and screw me over, I said irritably. Yeah, it's worth a lot, alright. It's also a limited edition. I'm aware, I replied directly. As in very limited. They only made 8.5 of this beauty. How do you expect me to shift that? It may as well have been a big flashing sign on it saying stolen. Joey tore his eyes from the bike, raising an eyebrow at me as my heart sank. I'd been caught up in the challenge of it. The moment I'd seen the bike, I knew I just had to ride it. What I didn't think about was the situation. Shit, I cursed. What does that mean for me? Joey tilted his head, eyeing the superbike again. 400. Fuck off, Joey. That bike cost over 40 grand, new, and it's only a few months old. My palm grew slicky and I kept my face in a mask of outrage, and worry began to gnaw at me. We needed the money from this job. I'd been hoping for 3 grand at the very least, and that bike was supposed to secure it for me. Take it or leave it, he said with a shrug, moving towards the shutters as if he was going to open them again. Please, I bit out, the word nearly burning my tongue. I need the money from this. Why are you so desperate for cash all of a sudden? He asked, eyeing me with something that almost looked like concern. Because I need every penny I can to get me and my sister the hell out of this backwards corner of nowhere and start our goddamn lives. None of your business, I replied steadily. Joy took it. 800, I replied steadily. 800, not a penny more. Done, I growled. It wasn't as much as I wanted, but it was better than nothing. Joey moved away to locate the cash, heading up a wooden staircase to build above us. Vou parar por aqui. vou parar por aqui. Eu já gostei bastante. Elas são super pobres, as duas estão tentando se virar pra pagar as contas. A Tori é ladroninha. Então ela rouba pra conseguir dinheiro, porque ela não tem outra opção. E ela rouba uma bicicleta super cara, que eu acho que eles só fizeram 80 edições dessa bicicleta. Edições não, 80 modelos. Modelos? Unidades, 80 unidades. E ele não quer pagar 3 mil pra ela, porque a bicicleta meio que vai ter uma placa de roubada, porque vão saber que tem pouca. Eu gostei muito. Nossa, gostei bastante. Já tô doida pra continuar lendo. E espero que vocês tenham ficado tão curiosas pela história quanto eu. E espero que tenham gostado desse primeiro livro. O próximo livro eu trago em português. E se vocês quiserem pedir algum livro, é só deixar nos comentários, tá bom? Um beijo, gente. Muito obrigada